Ayan. Hi, everyone. We have 48 viewers now. Audio check lang po tayo. Ayan, good morning, everyone. Uh, in a few po, magsistart na po tayo, no? So, in a short while, test lang po tayo sa audio natin. Loud and clear po ba? You can write down your comments po sa comment section. Ayan. So, good morning everyone. In a while po, again, we will start our session. So, audio check lang po tayo. Loud and clear po ba? Ayan. So, you can write your comments po sa comment section natin. And, ayan. So, later po ng session, we'll be having our forum session. So you can write down your questions and mamimili po kami na questions to be answered by our speaker. So ayan po. Alright, good morning everyone. So this is Kate Gayo, your host for today. I am a senior high school nurse here in our schools division of the city of Mati. It is my pleasure, ayan po, to welcome you here, everyone, no, this morning. I hope everyone is feeling great. Yan, feel good about yourself. So for today po, please be in your comfortable zone. Relax. Ayan, bumalik na po tayo. So, please be in your comfortable zone, no? You can sit wherever you like. And then just relax and enjoy po the activity today. So, I would like to thank you for joining us today for this special webinar entitled Gender Behind the Screen, Integrating Gender in the Blended Learning Design. This webinar po is an endeavored partnership of the Schools Division of the City of Mati with the Davao Oriental State College of Science and Technology Gender and Development Center. Okay, to formally start our webinar, we will start off po muna with the national anthem and to be followed by a prayer. Ayan, so check lang muna tayo. Okay na po ba ang audio? Can you comment down below po? Ayan, sa ating comment section kung meron na po yung audio. So, okay now, can you hear me loud and clear? Okay, all right. Thank you. So, ayan po. So, once again, welcome everyone to this webinar, Gender Behind the Screen, Integrating Gender in the Blended Learning Design. Again, this is an endeavored partnership of the Schools Division of the City of Mati with the Davao Oriental State College of Science and Technology Gender and Development Center. Ayan po. So, to present the objectives of the activity, our Division Senior Education Program Specialist, Dr. Liracil D. Shara.
Hello, good morning. Okay na tayo? Okay, good morning. Um, this activity is in partnership with Davao Oriental State College of Science and Technology, GOD Center or Gender and Development Center. And we're so grateful for their full support to DepEd Mati City. As to the objectives of this activity, the very purpose of this is basically to enhance our understanding of the teachers on gender and development. And the second one is enhancing as well the God concept. That basically we would like to ensure that the God concepts are integrated in the curriculum, which will basically be significant at this point because we have a pandemic and technically we will have to make some adjustments. And hopefully this God seminar, this activity will address the needs, and these objectives will also be addressed as well. So once again, good morning and enjoy the webinar.
All right. Ayan. Thank you, Doc Leo. So, again, we will be having our open forum. Please comment down below your questions to be answered by our speaker later. And for your applauses, no, sa mga applause po natin, we can comment down our emoticons, such yung nag-clap, and then the heart one. So, we need that one also. All right. So, moving right along it is now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. Our speaker is a licensed teacher, a graduate as a magna cum laude in Bachelor of Science in Education, major in biology, a bona fide faculty of Davao Oriental State College of Science and Technology, and currently the Gender and Development Center focal person of DOSCST. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Jonel Villegas. Please help me welcome to give us a message, our SGOD chief, Mr. Jory S. Uy.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the responsible persons on this behind the screen integrating gender behind the screen, integrating gender, the blended learning design, particularly Dr. Leo Sharot and of course the team members. And also I would like to thank the teachers for participating or attending this webinar on gender and development. And I would like also to thank Davao Oriental State College of Science and Technology, GOD Center, for extending their help as far as gender and development webinar is concerned. You know, fellow teachers or dear educators, in this a challenging time, we are very much aware that napakahirap po ng sitwasyon natin ngayon. And all of us are not in good, shall we say, uh, are in peace, no? Because of this disturbing situation in our locality or in our country, that we are dealing with this unseen enemy. But despite this thing, there's a need for us to continue our mandate, that is to continue educating our children despite the presence of this coronavirus disease. And it is quite challenging for us because though gender and development is not new and its concept is not new, but we have to make it sure, or we have to ensure that the concepts, the ideals of gender and development must be uh, integrated and must be taught to all our school children. And though we have different modalities, no, that we are going to employ, I do believe that we have the capabilities and the abilities to integrate gender in whatever modalities we are going to employ. And we are banking on new teachers on how are we going to do this. And we really want that these things must be manifested in all our lessons. So, dear teachers, I want you to be serious in this endeavor because we will not be facing our children, no, or pupils from time to time. So we will be banking on the different blended learning design or learning modalities. So we have to see to it that gender and development concept must be employed and must be practiced, especially nowadays that our children are at home. So congratulations to all of you for our concerted effort, and I hope that this will bear much fruit or more fruits for our children. That's all. Good morning once again.
Thank you for the warm message. That is our schools division. That is our SGOD chief, Sir Jurley. So again, let me introduce again our speaker, our guest speaker for today. He is a licensed teacher, a graduate as a magna cum laude in Bachelor of Science in Education, major in biology, a bona fide faculty of Davao Oriental State College of Science and Technology, and currently the Gender and Development Center focal person of DOSCST. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Janelle Villegas.
Hello, good morning, everyone. All right, hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ma'am Kate, no, for the warm introduction. Again, welcome to this webinar talk. This is a webinar series brought to you by the Gender and Development Center of DOSCST, at the same time, the DepEd City of Mati Division. The title of my talk is Gender Behind the Screen, Integrating Gender in the Blended Learning Design. Foremost, I would like to thank our partner from the Department of Education, especially to Dr. Leo Sharot, for giving us the opportunity to share our insights on gender and development. And of course, thank you to all of our partners in DepEd also, the GAD focal persons of the primary and secondary schools, and of course, the DOSCSD Gender and Development Center. Ayan, I feel honored, both honored and privileged to be invited today to talk to you about how to integrate gender in the blended learning design. Kasi mo man ni siya ang patok karon na istorya about blended learning. And then we have many considerations in designing our educational approach, especially that we are currently in a health crisis. However, most of these initiatives does not actually talk about gender. So this time, as one of our advocacies as well, we will help the primary and secondary schools, especially the teachers, how we can design our lessons while integrating gender. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss this morning. Foremost, we will talk about so that we can have a common understanding what is gender and development. I will first touch the basic gender and development concepts, particularly explaining the differences between sex and gender. And then another one is we will talk about blended learning in basic education. I am not an expert in blended learning, but I'll try to explain blended learning to you from the perspectives of gender. And then, of course, we will also talk about what are the different gender issues in the blended learning design. And lastly, this is the highlight of the talk, we will talk about gender integration in the blended learning design. By the way, I would like to greet our GAD focal persons from DepEd. Now, we have been in partnership with them for so long now, and we're actually very nervous about this endeavor because by far this is the largest audience that we will be handling in our seminar series. So at the moment we have 152 viewers. So this is quite a lot, no? And of course, there may be technical glitches along the way, but please bear with us. No? We will try to, as much as possible, facilitate a smooth discussion for all of you. All right. As I have said, we will talk about basic gender and development concepts first, or GAD concepts. Talking about gender and development, it is necessary that we should understand what do we mean by sex and what do we mean by gender, so that we can have a common understanding that these two terms are not synonyms. They actually have different meanings. And how are we going to use this in our activities as teachers? When we talk about sex, this refers to the biological and physiological characteristics that identify a person as either a female or male, which means that sex is determined by your biological characteristics. That's why when we talk about sex, there are chromosomes, there are genes, there are hormones that distinguish our males and females. So we have two different forms in humans. We have two different forms. We have the male and the female. So your biological identity, your physiological characteristics, that is what describes your sex. And sex actually is needed for reproduction. So we need males and females. This is present in our traditional family, Filipino family setup. No, we have a husband and a wife because the husband and the wife is needed for reproduction. So basically, because of our biological, anatomical, and physiological differences, the sperm cell coming from the males and the egg cells coming from the females, they are both needed for reproduction. And as I have said, sex is biologically determined, and humans are sexually dimorphic, meaning to say humans have two different forms. We have one form for males and one form for females. The thing about sex is that it's natural and it's fixed. Meaning when you are born as a biological male, you stay as a biological male for the rest of your life. Not unless you undergo surgery, which is not a natural process. But naturally, sex is natural and it is fixed. Now, because we assume, because of our sex, because of our physiological and anatomical differences, males and females assume different sex roles. So these sex roles can only be performed by one sex, particularly because of the sex that he or she has. So for example, females, they're capable of gestation, lactation, and childbearing, in which males are not capable of. On the other hand, males are in charge of ovum fertilization, sperm production, which the females are not capable also. So these differences now differentiate males and females, and they also set our different sex roles. On the other hand, when we talk about gender, nah, if sex is biological, gender, on the other hand, is cultural, social and cultural, because this will now refer to the different roles, behavior, and activities that a society considers appropriate for a female or male. So let's put it this way. When you are born a biological male, the society, the community now will decide whether you should have long hair or short hair, or whether you should wear blue shirts or pink shirts, etc. And these are things that are being dictated by the community. If you are born a biological female, the society now will decide whether you should have long hair or you should wear palda, etc. So these things are being considered in the social and cultural factors of the community. So when we talk about gender, as I have said, gender is sociologically constructed. It differs from one community to another community, meaning to say, in gender and development as well, we should recognize a pluralistic view of the community, pluralism, because we are all different and communities also have different concepts of gender. This means that gender also is fluid. That's why it can change from time and places, no? Mabitaw ng matingala ta, there are instances nga, uy, ano man to siya, babae man kay to siya, nag-a-appeal og pageant. But later on, nagpa-boycott naman, murag nahimo naman kuan, anang lalaki naman ang iyahang behavior, iyahang sinuotan. So, this, among others, are good indications that gender is indeed fluid, no? And as I mentioned a while ago, we also have different gender concepts from places to places. In the Philippines, we are a bit lucky because we are more developed in terms of gender and development. But in other countries, gender inequality, gender stereotyping, prejudice, they are more obvious. The good thing about gender as well is they determine whether a male is masculine, a female is feminine. Most of the time, we tend to think that males should be masculine or females should be feminine. So there is a hidden meaning kasi when it comes to how we define masculine or feminine. So masculine meaning panglalaki. And we tend to associate like black and white na dapat si males should only perform panglalaki nga behavior, panglalaki nga activities. But most of the time, or sometimes, there are males who are actually feminine. And there are females who are actually masculine. And when we see that a male is feminine or a female is masculine, we tend to label these persons as with different gender. So This is where our concept of LGBT comes in. And the thing about gender as well is it becomes the hallmark or the attribute of inequality. Why? Because some people look at you in terms of your gender. Let's say in hiring, or let's say in the classroom. May mga teachers tayo na, oy, eto, babae, so buutan ko ani sa klase. Or, oy, kani lalaki, so di ko ganahan ani kay sipat. These things are actually, we are unaware, but our decisions in the day-to-day undertaking nato in the classroom are actually influenced by gender. And the moment that we consider gender as a barrier to, let's say, an opportunity for a particular boy or for a particular girl, that is the time when we are actually practicing inequality. So in this talk, we will also talk about gender issues that may emerge or that are actually emerging in the new educational approach that we are adopting in DepEd. Okay, so when we talk about gender, gender refers to different roles, activities, and different norms that a community or a society actually deems appropriate for a particular man or woman. So the moment that you are born as a biological male or a biological female, you already have different sets of roles, different sets of activities, and different norms that the society thinks that are exclusive for you based on your gender. So we don't have a problem with this. We will respect the pluralistic point of view. However, most of the time, when gender inequality comes in, it becomes another story. It becomes another problem. So because of our gender, the society now will give you patterns of behaviors, attitudes, and expectations based on you being a male or a female. So let's say females, they're in charge of cooking, they're in charge of childcare or housekeeping. No? Kasagaran, these are the setup in our families. No? The females, because babae kang buhat, you should do the cooking, you should do the child caring, the housekeeping, etc. Whereas the males, because you are a male, you should provide income for the family and you should become the leader of the family. And these different gender roles actually can be performed by both sexes. Let's say male. Males can do cooking. Males can also be in charge of childcare, and males can also be in charge of housekeeping. Only that the community, the society prevents us from doing so because these are activities that are considered to be feminine. So a particular male now will think that, oh, I don't have to do this because if I do this, I will be labeled as gay or I will be labeled as feminine, which is another part of the story. Now, allow me to share to you this gender unicorn, no? So we can understand better, no, the concept of gender, particularly about gender identity, gender expression, and gender identity, expression, our biological sex, and our physical attraction or emotional attraction. When we speak of gender identity here, the topmost na nato na figure, this refers to how you think about yourself. No? So it's in your brain, it's in your mind. Let's say you think about yourself as a male, as a man, or as a boy. And that's your identity. And nobody can ever question your identity because that is how you identify yourself. You identify yourself as a female or as a woman. There are several instances wherein alam ng community na itong babaeng to boyish. Pero pag tinanong mo siya, ayaw niya ding tawagin na lalaki. Kasi gusto niya, tawagin pa rin siyang babae because that is how she identifies herself. That's why we need to be careful in calling out names to our brothers and sisters, no, na labi na ka ng mga instances na motawag na tagkalit og yours or motawag ta kalit og besh, bes. Bakit basin dili sila ganahan? Because it contradicts to the gender identity that they define for themselves. Another concept about gender is about gender expression. So expression is something about how you dress, how you walk, how you talk, how you behave generally. So you can be categorized as either feminine in terms of dressing, kung nagdadamit pang babae ka ba, or nagdadamit pang lalaki, masculine, or there would be other gender expressions. Like, may mga tao bitaw na they really like lots and lots of tattoos in their body. That's how they express themselves. Okay. Considering tattoos, for example, no, di ba we have different impression if a male has tattoo or a female has a tattoo. Sa mga lalaki, pag naitato, gwapo, hot, no? Pero pag maot gani, adik, no? Pag babae naman, lahi po datong impression for tattoos. But these are things that are being considered under gender expression. Of course, this concept, I talked about this a while ago, about sex being assigned at birth. And actually, this is biological, whether you are female or you are male or you belong to the intersex. May mga individuals kasi tayo na they have two different sexes, but these are cases that are rare. And then this is a very important concept, no? To whom are you attracted to, either physically or emotionally? If you're attracted to physically and emotionally attracted to women, and you're a woman, that becomes that will label you as a homosexual. Or if you're a woman and you're attracted to a man, that will label you as a heterosexual. Or if you're attracted to both sexes, regardless if they are women or men, you can be considered as a bisexual, other genders. So this defines to whom you are physically attracted or emotionally attracted. Now, the thing with this gender unicorn is these are different concepts, no? You can be attracted to men, but you identify yourself as a male, and you dress masculine. Pwede yun. Or you can be attracted to women, pero nag-appeal po kag pageant. You express yourself, nag-rampa-rampa, corona, may mga corona, may mga title, and you identify yourself as a female. Pwede din yun. So, anyways, you can have a different gender identity, a different gender expression, a different physical or emotional attraction, and this is okay. No? As I have said, in gender and development, we value pluralism. Okay? Now, just a quick survey if you have identified or you really understood the concept of sex and gender or sex or gender. We will have this short learning check. No? Just try to look at each item and then we will determine whether this refers to sex or gender. Say, number 1, men cannot cook. Is this sex or gender? Of course, this is a concept under gender because technically, this gender role, cooking, can be done by both men and women. For number 2, women have larger breasts than men. This characteristic talks about a biological character. Because of biological factors like hormones in the body of a female, the estrogen, you have larger breasts than men. This is biological. Therefore, this is sex. Or at schools, di ba, may mga concept tayo na little girls are gentle, o pag babae, behave. Pag lalaki gani, sipat kaayo. This is a concept of gender and not a concept of sex because girls are not innately gentle and boys are not innately rough. This may be something that is influenced by the environment that they belong to. or the expectations that are being set upon them by the community. Let's say for number 5 here, boys can't play with dolls. Who says that boys can't play with dolls? Pwede naman, no? So this is a concept of gender. Or here, number 11, women menstruate, men don't. So this is a concept that talks about biological character. Of course, women will really menstruate based on their biological, based on their reproductive structure. And men will not menstruate. So this concept talks about sex. So to sum up, so we can have a common understanding what is sex and gender, we should always remember that sex is biological and gender is cultural. Now, going into the teaching learning setup, we should always remember that our school children, they have different sexes and at the same time, they have different genders. Okay, and based on their sexes and genders, they may have different needs as well that we need to address in our classroom setup. Which will bring us to this concept, to this talk about demystifying blended learning in basic education. No? As a brief overview, we have been talking about blended learning in the past, although this is relatively a relatively old model in education. But today, medyo sumikat siya because of the pandemic that we are in. So because of the restrictions ng travel and the restrictions in the physical face-to-face setup ng classroom, our educational institutions like us in higher ed and of course in our DepEd schools, we are forced to implement blended learning. No? And then as I have said, I'm not an expert in the talk about blended learning. This is actually my first time to discuss this in public. But I will try to explain blended learning from a gender perspective. So it's basically integrating gender in the blended learning design. So I'll talk to you about a little bit about blended learning, but we will focus on the gender component of it. Okay, for a start, we should define blended learning as an integration of face-to-face and online transaction. No? There's a reason why blended learning is termed as blended learning because technically and literally it's blended. It's blending the traditional face-to-face setup and online setup. Now, the way we integrate face-to-face and online transaction, that gives birth to different models of blended learning. And today, as we are challenged with the face-to-face setup, of course, as teachers, no, mas piliun sa gyud nato ning face-to-face because this is a little hassle for all of us. Because technically, we have been doing this for a very long time now. But because of the situation that we are in, we need to adapt. No? It's a sudden shift. Now, we need to have online transactions. Although, daghan ang na-shock, no, kay mag-online, it's very costly, daghan og mga concerns, daghan og challenges and hurdles for us teachers and the students alike. However, we should realize that actually, we have been doing blended learning and we may not be aware of it. No? Like email, the lessons, that's the simplest form. I would say it's a simple form of online learning model. And we have been doing that already. Sometimes we require pa our students to upload their videos on Facebook or YouTube, and then we let others rate it through the number of likes, although this has been discouraged already, but we have done it. And that's online. Now, it's just a matter of designing our lessons properly so that we can limit face-to-face. We can also respond to the needs in terms of online. And at the same time, we can maximize the learning of our students. If you try to look at the literatures here, no, 2013, 2011, and 2018, these literatures are actually present way, way, way before Corona. Kaya lang, kaya nga lang now we are forced to do it because of the situation that we are in. But blended learning has been referred as a new normal in course delivery ever since 2011. So kita nyo yan, 2011, may mga literatures na on blended learning as the new normal, but we do not appreciate it in our classroom setup. And the thing with blended learning is, this is our goal, di ba? In Principles of Education, we need to provide student-centric learning environment. Yan were the days that the teachers are considered to be the sage on the stage or the center of attraction. Rather, we should just facilitate learning so that our students can learn on their own. That's the principle of facilitating learning. And blended learning will offer you that through the combination of face-to-face and online transaction. And the good thing about blended learning is it offers more flexibility. Ito naman yung importante eh. Why don't we term distance education or online education? Why do we have to term blended? Or why do we have to use this learning model? Because it offers us flexibility. No? When we talk about when we talk about blended learning, there are a lot of issues that comes with it. But we need to be as flexible as we can in this time of situation, in this time of pandemic, because of the many issues that we are also facing, like health issues, social issues, political issues, and a lot more, no? So this is the good thing about, I think this is the good thing about blended learning. Now, in blended learning, we are slowly shifting from sight because education, we perceive it as happening inside the classroom. And we teachers, we tend to think that our students, our pupils, do not have learnings outside the classroom. No? So the blended learning design now will shift from sight to service form of education. Meaning to say, education now becomes a service and schools become service providers of this education. The schools will be the one to design the learning, the teaching learning approach, and then give it to the students, not solely on face-to-face, but combining through online learning. So let's say we have here the Venn diagram. So we have time in the classroom, the site. This is where face-to-face learning comes in. And then we also have independent learning, which they can do online, because in blended learning, we can technically leave, let's say, learning material. So you watch these videos, access the website, access the learning management system, and you watch the video on your own. And then tomorrow, we will discuss it in the classroom. So that's how you combine independent learning online and then time in the classroom face-to-face. Or they can also do collaboration works like in the classroom and online setup. Now, how do we implement blended learning? So, of course, para mas masabta nato, blended learning involves courses that integrate online with face-to-face, courses that are taught both in the classroom and at a distance. Mixing, this is the good thing about it, is where we are mixing or combining instructional technology with actual tasks in order to create a harmonious effect of learning and working. And then we also combine computers with traditional teaching. It's also referred to as reverse teaching, flip teaching, backwards classroom, or reverse instruction. So to cut the long story short, blended learning is about being flexible in your teaching learning approach. You can use online, face-to-face, or a modular, or a combination of these strategies just to provide the students with the best option of learning. So for DepEd schools, uh, for even for us in higher education, this is our blended learning plan. No? Let me share this with you because this will have a significant part in our integration, gender integration. So let's say in the goals, in the objectives, in the assessment strategies and tools, if we try to look at this one by one, we can actually integrate gender in terms of the goals or inclusion, for example. In terms of objectives, we can put gender, we can include. In our assessment, no, we can integrate gender. Or in our strategies, so of course, sa ating strategies, we can of course integrate gender. And then the tools that we are using in the classroom, we can also integrate gender. The question is how. No? So later, we will talk about the how to integrate gender in the blended learning plan. Now, these are the different options for our DepEd schools. Number one, I would say here, the ideal, mo gini atong ginaampo nga unta mabalik na lang ni. But in as much as you would like to teach our children, our students, our pupils, we are also restricted by the fear that we may be increasing the risk against coronavirus disease if we will be employing face-to-face. So that's why, as much as possible, we will discourage face-to-face interaction. And then, of course, online or virtual, ito ang daming concerns over Facebook. No? What if mag-online, our students cannot afford to do so? Mag-virtual learning, our students don't have a good internet connection. They don't have IT infrastructure at home. They don't have computers. They don't have cell phones. They can barely go to school. How much more to afford gadgets for online learning? So these observations are actually legit, and we cannot discount these observations. That's why we are also encouraged to do modular. No? Based on my talk with Sir Leo and Ma'am Joanne last week, you will be implementing the modular approach in learning, which is actually a good thing because generally, lahat ng students can do modular. But this modular approach also have different issues that it carries along. Like the parents now will say na learning will take place at home. So it's a different dimension because learning takes place at home. So how can the household resources accommodate modular approach? That's also another thought that we can delve into. Or as I have said, the blended learning design offers flexibility. So let's say may mga students naman pala na kaya nila ng online or virtual, so we give it to them. Or may mga students naman pala na kaya din sa modular, gusto ng modular, so we give it to them. And then we can also implement face-to-face, but we should consider social distancing, minimum health standards. So this is the thing with blended learning design because we can be flexible in our approaches. Only that, for example, as a teacher, I know you can relate with me the burden among the burden of these works to all teachers because sa diri nakay upat, no, combination of these approaches, fully modular, online or face-to-face. That would also mean that your teaching load as a teacher will be multiplied into 4. No, okay, what if may estudyante na gustong mag face-to-face and then fully online? Pag online naman, we can also talk about synchronous and asynchronous learning. Pag real time like this one, this is synchronous. But there are also asynchronous, like I will upload a video of this talk and then you will just watch it on your convenient time. That's asynchronous. Okay? So to sum it up, we are provided with these different options and it's up to us now how are we going to implement it in our classroom. However, when we implement this in our classroom, we should take into consideration the different gender issues or the gender dimension that we can encounter via the implementation of these approaches. So which brings me to this topic, the emerging gender issues in the blended learning design. When we talk about blended learning design, and of course, gender issues or issues in general, we should take into account three major considerations. Number one is access. Two, equity. And then three, quality. No? Access. No? Like we have been advocating this note, it's education should be free access to all, especially our basic ed. And now we have free higher education in the tertiary level that brings more access, or that gives more access to our students to access higher education. Basically, this is the question of access in our blended learning design is we should ask if our students have access, whether or not they have access to our blended learning approach. So access. May access ba ang estudyante in terms of online? Kung modular naman, and then yung mga activities na ginabutang dito sa modular, they have to perform this and that. Do they have access to the materials included in the module, in the learning design? Or do they have access to resources that they need so they can perform or they can study at home? This is a question of access. And when we think of gender, we should think of, do girls and boys have access to our learning activity or to our learning design? Because considering the pandemic has a different impact among girls. It also has a different impact among boys. So now, in terms of access, we should also take into account the gender difference or the gender parity when we talk about access. And then another one is about equity. No? Do girls and boys have equal access? So the question in number one is, do they have access? Sa ikaduha naman, do they have equal access? So it's a different question when we talk about do they have access or do they have equal access. As I have said, the pandemic has a different impact to girls and boys. Our girls and boys at home, they have different roles being performed at home. Yung mga babae, because of the community quarantine, they stay at home. Their household chores are also present because we cannot deny it that women are in charge of cooking, women are in charge of cleaning, women are in charge of housekeeping, and these women also train our girls to do the same. So most of the time, kung makita mo, ang bata na babae will come with a mother, will train with the mother. So kung sa'y trabaho ni mama, mo po ang trabaho ni bata nga babae. So these household dynamics, this also has an impact to the learning of our students. And then third is a question of quality. No? Of course, we should make sure not only about compliance na basta kayo may module na ma-provide, or basta kayo makaturo lang ako regardless if may maintindihan sila o wala. That's a question of quality. Because while we need to consider access, we need to consider equity, we also need to make sure that our students receive the best quality of education, even if we are not meeting face to face. And the only way to ensure quality is if we maintain free access and equity in our blended learning design. So let me share this with you. No? This is a very interesting and at the same time alarming na scenario. No? I'll be talking here about the 5 barriers to girls' education. Why girls? In the Philippines, we are a patriarchal society. And whether we like it or not, women or girls are marginalized. They are considered to be the secondary citizens. No? Although we are working very hard to attain gender equality, but most of the time, even at schools, gender inequality is present. Number 1, poverty. Poverty may affect both men and women. However, we should realize that poverty actually has a different impact to men and different impact to women. For example, ay nak, wala tayo kwarta. If the family cannot afford to send children to school, usually ang unahon paundang ang babae. Why? Kasi maminyo ramang gihapon ka nak, buhion man ka sa imong bana. But the boys, alangan mang ilahang itugway ilang asawa. So they should be the one to finish school. That's why when they drop out of school, the girls, because of poverty, we are again opening the girls to gender-based violence, makulatahan, or here, lack of girl-friendly school environment, like the lack of decent comfort rooms for our women, for our girls. Diba? This is very difficult, no? Kasi sa lalaki, okay lang naman because pwede ra sila manghihi sa kilid-kilid, pwede ra manghihi. Although daapoy mga lalaki nga dili comfortable ana. Pero ang women, ang mga babae sa atong classroom, and then ginabawal pag yun nato mo gamit sa CR kay mahugaw. So that's actually a big question of a child-friendly school na environment. And then of course, our gender inequality is more predominant among girls. And then factors such as child marriage and early pregnancy, these also prevent. So of course, pag mabuntis, and we have a policy in schools, no? I do not know if this is still applicable at present. Na pag mabuntis ang babae, mabuntis ang bata, aside from being labeled as kanang i-question siya sa community nga kabata pa ani nabuntis na. They will also be subjected to school policies na bawal mag-eskwela ang buntis na babae, which is not a good thing. I think parang naano na siya with the Philippine Commission on Women na in college, pag imuha na siyang buhaton, you can be charged, no? Pag imuhang paundangon ang bata just because buntis siya or something, no? And we have different impact. For example, babae lalaki, high school, nabuntis ang babae, nakabuntis ang lalaki. Diba we have different impression for babae nga nabuntis kaysa sa lalaki nga nakabuntis? And that speaks a lot about barriers to girls' education. This also explains why, if we try to look at this next figure here, this is a data coming from UNESCO. Ang sabi niya, out of the 28.4 million boys na out of school, and out of the 30.9, mas marami pa rin sa 30.9 million girls na out of school, although the difference may not be that significant. Pero if you try to dig deeper, to analyze it deeper, around 8.2 only of this 28.4 million boys out of school boys are unlikely to enter school. But when you try to look at the females, the girls, this 8.2 is relatively doubled to 16.0. So meaning kung out of school si girl, mas wala siya chance to enter school than the boys na out of school. And then, in terms of ano po, in terms of likely to enter school in the future, si boys, mas mo enter siya compared to girls with 9.7%. And then, for those who left school, no, pag ang lalaki, no, bito ni mas daghan ang dropout among boys, 6.9, and then lesser dropout for girls at 5.2. So, kani pa lang nga illustration, this illustration alone speaks a lot about access of boys and girls in our educational setup. And today na we are in a pandemic situation, we are in a global pandemic, these issues even magnify, no? Nag-magnify pa yun sila. So these are the basic questions that we need to ask. This is a work in progress, no? We can add, we can revise these questions, but my purpose of including this in my talk, in my presentation, is letting you to ask this and improve the questions so that when we go back to our classrooms, we can consider this in our lessons. Okay? Number 1, do students have access to blended learning materials? So as I have said, naba sila'y access? Naba sila'y laptop? Naba sila'y computer? Or naba sila'y pang print sa module? These are things that we need to take into consideration. And then secondly, this is important. What are the household dynamics that may affect students' access? As I mentioned a while ago, the girls and boys, men and women, they have different roles, gender roles at home. Of course, the concept of multiple burden is true among women. Si women, si woman, siya tigluto, siya tighugas, siya tiglimpyog balay, siya tigatiman sa mga bata, etc. etc. Multiple burden. So kung yun ani ang trabaho pod sa ato mga girls, ato mga students, do you think they still have enough time to finish the module on time? And how about the boys? What are their roles inside the house that may affect their access to the modular approach that we will be using? Okay? And then another thing, do girls and boys have equal access? So this is a question of equity to blended learning materials. No? Equal access. As I have said, this is a question of equity. For example, what's the difference between equity and equality in terms of access in the classroom? No? When we speak of equality, no, it's about valuing boys and girls, their needs, considering their needs equally. No? But in terms of equity, it talks about fairness of treatment for women and men according to their respective needs. For example, of course, we have a setup in the classroom na may mga fast learner, slow learners, and average learners. Equality would suggest na whatever learning activity that you give, you should give to the fast learner, slow learner, and the average learners. Because that's equality. No? That's considering or treating them fairly or equally. However, kabalo man ta nga lahi og need si fast learner. So the learning activity that you apply for the fast learners may not be applicable to the slow learners or may not be applicable to the average learners. Now, if you consider their needs and their gender dynamics, that's a question of equity. That's a concept of equity because you will give a different approach to fast learners, you will give a different approach to average learners, and you'll give a different approach to slow learners. So do we consider this in our modular approach? Na si fast learner mo ni ang iyang trabaho. Si slow learner mo ni ang trabaho, or do we just give them equal? And then how about the learning facilitators at home? If their may mga learning facilitators ba sila? Do they have ates and kuyas who can help them in their learning endeavors? Or they're on their own sa kanilang learning? These are things na di natin pinag-uusapan when it comes to blended learning materials. And unknowingly, these have a gender component that seems to be invisible to all of us. And then lastly, we should also ask, how do girls and boys equality in the blended learning design? Meaning to say, what is a quality learning material for them? Because girls, they have a different concept of quality. Boys, they also have a different concept of quality, which will actually be related to my next slide. In terms of student satisfaction, this is available in our literature in 2015, 2016, and 2018. Basically, these studies explore the gender dynamics inside the classroom when it comes to blended learning design or online learning or blended learning models. 1, females have higher satisfaction in terms of computer self-efficacy, instructor characteristics, and facilitating conditions. Meaning to say, females, they express higher satisfaction in terms of blended learning environment. So when they're engaged in blended learning compared to males, they are highly satisfied. So sila lalaki, pwede na ang iyang perception is, ay blended na po, di mo ko ganahan ani, or modular, di ko ganahan ani. And women tend to favor the blended learning environment more than men. So these are actually related, Kasi mas higher ang kanyang satisfaction, so mas ganahan siya ng mas gusto niya yung blended learning compared to men. So when we do the blended learning design, we should consider nga women mas ganahan siya aning approach and men are not. So this alone will give us the idea to account how does men feel, or how do men feel about the blended learning in relation to this third study. Feelings predict the final grades in males. Sabi niya, pag gusto ko or ayaw ko in the blended learning environment, I have a higher grade if gusto ko, I have a lower grade if ayaw ko. That's the case of males. But in terms of females, they appreciate more the course design. Hence, if they like the course design, that's the time that they also have higher final grades. So you see, based on these existing literatures, we can now appreciate that men and women have different impression, have different appreciation to the blended learning design. And these different appreciations must be considered in the development of our learning modules. Okay? So how can we motivate our learners ba? Like males, because they are particular into the feelings, and the females are particular into the course design. How can we motivate them better to engage in the blended learning design? That's a question now of quality. So we should always remember access, equity, and quality. Now, those are the different issues. I hope you realize something, or you realize the things, the gender issues that may emerge or have emerged on the blended learning design that we are implementing at schools. Now, what can we do about it? So this is now the concept of gender integration in the blended learning design. Most importantly, no, we should obtain sex disaggregated data, or what we call as the SDD. The SDD, these are data that are being collected and analyzed separately on males and females. You try to look at the figure here, the illustration here. Let's say there are numbers. No, this is in higher education. I'm sorry, I was not able to find an example for basic ed. Pero this is just to give you an overview of how sex disaggregated data can help you in your blended learning design. Number one, if you try to look at pre-baccalaureate, meaning before primary, in the primary ed, in the basic ed, only around 73,000 women will enter college. There are more boys who will enter college. However, no. I'm sorry. No, there are more males in the basic ed compared to females. But in terms of their decision to enter baccalaureate degrees, mas marami ang babae na gustong mag-enter kaysa sa lalaki. And then eventually, this will boil down post-baccalaureate, master's, and doctorate. 14,000 females will finish doctorate, while men only 9,000. So if you check the difference, no, mas marami si babae. Actually, this is an issue. This is a good analysis. Why are there more women who are successful in education compared to males, when in fact, in terms of access, males have more access to education? So that's a good research question that we can also ask. Another thing is the SDD will tell us the who questions. Let's say in the classroom, who are better learners? Or who performs better? Who performs, who needs more attention? Okay? And when we do have the sex disaggregated data, or the SDD, these are useful in the gender analysis. We can use this in needs assessment because we can now profile what are the needs of our students in terms of gender. No? And then we can use this in decision making. Let's say in designing the module, or implementing the module, or evaluating the learning of our students. As I have mentioned in our blended learning model, blended learning plan, lesson plan a while ago. No? So we can use this. Basically, SDD, this is very easy to gather because you will just count how many men and how many women are there in your classroom, and you already have that. So you already have the profile, how many men and women, but the question is, did you do gender analysis? Did you ask yourself, what are the needs of these women and men? Or are you aware that they have different needs? Or you're just designing the modules blindly by not taking into account the different needs of these genders, etc. Okay? Another one is in the classroom, or when we start our modular sessions, we can address gender-based and gender-specific needs. For example, we can conduct orientation on DepEd Order 27 series of 2017. So this is the DepEd order that talks about gender-responsive basic education. Basically, for all the GAD focal persons here, you can actually use this as a benchmark or as a basis for gender and development planning and budgeting in your respective institutions. We can also talk about child protection policy. No? So our teachers trained on these things like child protection policy. Kasi chances are, we teachers, we also have our different gender biases. And we may be unaware of it, but our comments in the classroom, our remarks, for example, ikaw, badlungon yun kang tawhana ka ba? So, mo na kay lalaki, badlungon, ana. These simple comments actually can have a great impact to the lives of our learners. So are we even aware of that? Or we're doing it inside the classroom and then we're not thinking of its impact to our learners. And then of course, we also have to consider, no, this is important, kasi nasistress ang mga bata, wala kaayoy information on blended learning design, and then baka pagtuon nila, they're demanding better, they're demanding to their parents na, ma, I need a laptop, or I need a tablet, or I need a cell phone, but their parents cannot afford. So as a result, it results to rebellion, or worse, it results to depression. So these are things that we should also address. Remember that gender and development talks about holistic approach in human development. So that should include mental health. That should include psychosocial support and interventions. So we also need to capacitate our teachers on this note so they can perform simple psychosocial support. Kasi nga, as I have said, a simple comment from us, teachers, may have a long-lasting impact to the lives of our students. Okay, let me highlight this one. No? Third is the inclusion of gender in the lesson. No? I remember there was this study, I think, or research in DepEd. I don't know if the author is listening now. In DepEd, no, that I have seen it, integrate niya or inclusion of gender in the lesson or in lesson development. And then if you can remember the blended learning plan that I showed you, diba I said that you can include gender in the goals, you can include gender in the objectives, you can include gender in the lesson, in the tools, in the assessment, in the teaching strategies. You can actually incorporate gender. The question is how, no? Number one is through the development of non-sexist school materials. No? Nasa generation pa ba tayo na ang ama ang haligi ng tahanan at ang ina ay ang ilaw ng tahanan? Kasi these are found in elementary books. But in the current setup of the family, pwede actually si ina siya ang maging haligi ng tahanan because she's earning better than the husband, or she's earning and the husband is staying at home. There are more cases of house husband now. So that's not a problem. But our school materials are actually sexist. They label the mothers to be just to be the ilaw, and then the fathers as the haligi, which may not hold appropriate for all Filipino setup or for all family setup. Or nagpapadrawing pa ba tayo ng mga family tree na kailangan may babae, lalaki at home. And then when our students, kahit magaling siya, they cannot present because si babae pala iniwan ni lalaki. Or sa bahay pala, wala siyang papa pero dalawa ang kanyang mama. Or sa bahay, wala siyang mama pero duha ang iyang papa. These are dynamics, gender dynamics, that we often not mention in our school materials, or we often not consider in our school materials. Another thing is the use of gender-neutral language. No? Do we still call the chairman as the chairman? So pag chair, lalaki talaga kasi chairman nga. No? Why can't we use chair or just chair or chairperson? Or why can't we refer to a director na babae and lalaki? Why do we have to change it to directress pag babae? No? Director is more gender neutral. Or when writing ba, let's say in the examples that we give in our classes, when writing, do we write he or she? Kasagaran sa atong example, he is Ganon. Or his brother, puros lalaki, no? Where is the where are the women? And then in biology, eto mahilig kami dito who is the father of genetics? Who is the father of nursing? May mga ganyan, no? So, father, so nasaan yung mother? Nasaan yung female, no? As much as possible, we should be gender sensitive, no? We should be gender neutral in the language that we use, whether behind the screen, face to face, or in the modular approach. And then, the implementation of gender-appropriate learning activities. Baka naman may mga activities ka dyan na very impossible for girls to perform. Kasi modular, they are staying at home. So, baka naman, palanguyunin mo sila dito sa dagat nga kuha niya, di ka balo mo lang May mga ganyan, na mga considerations, no? We should also consider. And then, of course, let's say in our examples, let's say math, no? In the examples that we give or in the problems that we give to our students, we can actually integrate the values of or gender, the concepts of gender. For example, in our examples, usually, Maria is a sales lady. Sales lady napa si Maria, no? I mean, pwede man po maging sales agent si lalaki. But usually in the examples that we give, si babae atong gina-portray na sales agent. And bisag example lang na siya, but this is actually an addition to our students' concept of gender. So siya mismo na bata, thinking about his or her career projection, ngayon na siya karon nga, ay, mag-sales lady ko, kaya ang babae, good pang sales lady, good siya. Pero wala ka kabalo, gikuha din niya dito from the many examples or from the many problems that you give, math problems that you give at school. So you see, gender is not only a concern of our sociology teachers or our Aralpan teachers, but it should be a concern of all teachers. Okay? And then we can touch of course, this is very important, no? In the cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and the affective domain of our learning design, we should always touch gender. So, there are activities that we can give that would lead our students to appreciate or recognize the role of women and men in the society. Even if you're teaching PE, for example, or if you're teaching mathematics, if you're teaching physics, you can do this. And it's just a matter of mentioning, no? Kasi naman our concept of learning, diba, these days is not discipline based. As much as possible, we go interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. So if we can include, if there's a chance for us to include gender in these talks, in these discussions, that would be much appreciated. And then most importantly, I think this is the last input that I will give to you this morning. Now, most importantly, we should collaborate with families. This is very important now kasi nga, di ba, you are using online or pwede na modular approach. So most probably, the learning of our students now will take place inside the home or inside the household. So now, we should engage, we should collaborate with these families, train them to avoid sexist behaviors. These learnings should actually start in the family, but we cannot blame our families na kung wala sila kabalo og gender and development. In the first place, we are the educated people. So we should know better than them. Kaya nga, when you join this webinar, when you join this discussion, more responsibilities are actually vested upon you because your eyes are now open. So pag na-open na yung mata mo, parang kasalanan ng pumikit. No? Okay. Anyways. And then, we should ensure that there's equal treatment of girls and boys, no? Of learners in general at home. Ito kasi yung problema, no? Even as teachers, no? I'm sure you can relate with this. Kasi 'di ba, we are working from home or kasagaran sa atong mga trainings karon, mga workshops, they are taking place online. So that means that we are just in the school while we are learning or we are training ourselves. That's okay. That's good because that saves us a lot of resources for travel. However, the common concept is kay naaraman ka sa eskwelahan, ang konsepto, pwede na ka masugo anytime. No? Pwede na ka mabunlot anytime. So, you cannot dedicate your time fully to training, to learning. And that is the same case with our students. No? Kung titingnan mo, they're just at home. Ang problema karon, kung nasa balay, pasabot, pwede ka budloton anytime. So can they prioritize their modules over household chores? Or along with the online thing, the Internet of Things sa atong blended learning design, di ba ang boys, they are more prone to computer addiction, computer games addiction. So they are more tempted to perform or to engage in computer games than to engage in your learning activities. That's something that we should also consider. And then, as I have said, we should practice self-transformation. No? We should use as teachers, we should be examples of being gender sensitive, being gender responsive. Sensitive means you are able to identify gender issues that are present so that you can address it better in your learning design. Being gender responsive is doing things proactively so that you can contribute to gender equality and women's empowerment. And kasagaran, atong self-pod, we have our own biases. So, baka naman may mga comments din tayo dyan na ay bawal bakla dito kasi ganito. And then as I have said, your simple words may have a long-lasting impact to our students. And then of course, when we start with ourselves, we become agents of social transformation. And that will start only if we actively engage and we actively recognize gender and development even in our teaching design and teaching and learning designs. Okay? I think that was this is the last slide of my talk, no? So before I end and before we enter the open forum, I know you have several questions in mind. I will answer them if we still have time. No, we will have to talk to our moderator. But at the same time, we will try to as much as possible answer them. Anyways, before that, I'd like to introduce to you the webinar series that the Gender and Development Center has organized together with the DepEd City of Mati Division. Okay, we have 4 talks actually na naka-line up. So the first one now, today we have the Gender Behind the Screen, Integrating Gender in the Blended Learning Design. Second talk will be delivered by our partner in Davao del Norte State College, Professor Sadi Lauay. She will talk about emerging gender issues amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And then the director of our center, because she is a licensed criminologist, she will talk about, si Dr. Geraldine H. Sacro will talk about quarantine or quarantined, updates on gender-based violence amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And then lastly, we have another focal person in the name of Professor Maryphil M. Bauyot, uh, because she is in the field of psychology, particularly clinical psychology. So her talk will be about gender and mental health, experiences and lessons from COVID-19 pandemic. So I introduce this to you so you would be aware. No, there are many inquiries about whether or not we will be giving certificates. No, so we will negotiate this with our partner in DepEd if we can give out certificates and of course devise a mechanism to ensure that those we will be providing with certificates are actually actively engaged or who actually participated in the learning discussion. So please await for more information in the DepEd Tayo Mati City Facebook page and of course the Facebook page of Davao Oriental State University, which I am also managing. Okay, so I think that would be all for my talk. I hope you learned even a little from me. And we also hope that this will not be the last time that we see each other. We have uh, a lot to offer pa in the Gender and Development Center. So I hope you will all be supportive in our future endeavors. Once again, thank you very much for your time and for bearing with me in our several hours of talk. And I hope you will all have a good day. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Sir Reginald. So, open na po ang open forum natin. Uh, open na po yung open forum natin. So, our moderator will be sharing the screen for the questions. Please comment down below your questions so that our speaker can answer. Ayan. So we will ayan. So no questions. You can key in your or comment down your questions. No? So murag nasabtan jud kaayo Sir Janelle. So anyhow, anyway, wala man jud questions, no? Loud and clear. Thank you, Sir Janelle, for imparting your knowledge. We've learned so much from you this day. It was precise and relevant presentation. I am sure all of us can relate, as in super relate, should know, to each and every word that you mentioned. And thank you again, sir. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. You're welcome. No? We will always be here as an active partner of DepEd.
All right. Thank you, Sir Janelle. Ayan. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, ito po, that wraps up our morning. On behalf of the Schools Division of the City of Mati, headed by our Schools Division Superintendent, Mrs. Alona C. Oiseso-4, thank you all for making time in your busy schedules to join us here in this morning. And it has been our pleasure to host this webinar, right, Doc Leo?
Yeah.
So we wish you all a pleasant day and keep safe, everyone. And please, before we end, we will be having our evaluation of training. Doc Leo.
And again, thank you, Sir Junel, for the opportunity and at the same time for gracing the invitation for us to have, of course, this activity. I would like to ask the participants to please take into account that we have the evaluation and attendance, and we will actually be flashing it now. That will serve as well as the giving, of course, of your certificate, the basis for us to give your certificates. So please try to answer the link that we will be flashing in the screen right now. Okay. Again, thank you, Sir Junel, for this activity. And then we would, of course, be expecting more from the DUSCST God Center, given that we will be having more webinars in the coming months. This activity is just one of the webinars that we will be having from from July to October. And DUSCST God Center is always our dependable partner in our advocacy to advance respect and holistic development of every person in our schools. We also thank the SDS, Ma'am Alona Uy, for the encouragements and the guidance to all those who have been part in the preparation and implementation of today's activity, especially to Ma'am Marnie sa ICT natin, si Ma'am Bambi sa ating nag-host, nag-MC sa atin ngayon, si Sir Joey for the technical assistance as well, si Ma'am Joanne for the technical assistance, si Sir Boyser, our God focal person in the division, si Sir Chief Jorley for supporting us, all the SJOD and CID at yung mga admin personnel ni natin sa division who have always been with us in this fight, in this effort of delivering the services to our teachers in the field. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you next month for another webinar. And for the certificate, of course, of appreciation, this will, of course, be handed over to Sir Junel. We will just be sending this to you, sir. And let me read the citation. Republic of the Philippines, Department of Education, Region 11, Schools Division of the City of Mati, Dahican City of Mati. Certificate of Appreciation. This certificate is awarded to Sir Junel P. Villegas in recognition of his meritorious role as speaker during the conduct of the webinar on Gender Behind the Screen, Integrating Gender in the Blended Learning Design, given at the ICT Library Hub, Dahican City of Mati, July 20, 2020. Signed, Ma'am Alona C. Uy, our Assistant Schools Division Superintendent, Officer in charge of the Office of the Schools Division Superintendent. Again, marami pong salamat sa pakikiisa at hopefully we will still be with us in the coming webinars and in all the efforts that we will be doing for our learners, particularly here in the Schools Division of the City of Mati. Sa atin pong lahat, mabuhay po tayo at patuloy po tayong iangat ang kalidad ng ating edukasyon, sulong edukalidad. Magandang umaga.
Yeah, keep safe, everyone. Bye. See you next sessions.
Bye.
Thank you for supporting us.
Yeah.